Good evening, everybody. I can't tell you what an honor it is to be with my dear friend and a giant in the world of music and the world of guitar, Sérgio. Thank you, Assad.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So, Sérgio, there's so many questions to ask you. It's kind of overwhelming, but we're going to just go back a little bit, dial back to your studies with this legendary teacher, Monina Tavora. And can you say anything about her teaching that was so powerful for you, or things that you remember, a particular teaching, or even something that you pass on to your own students?
Well, first of all, it's a great pleasure to be here this evening, and it's a great pleasure to be sitting by you. I've known Dan for over 30 years. It's just a long time.
Crazy, yeah.
He speaks louder than I do, so I hope you can hear me in the back. Okay, this legendary teacher that he's referring to, actually it was quite legendary in Brazil back in the 70s. She was the teacher of the Astor Brothers. They were another pair of Brazilian that became a fantastic duo back in the 70s. And when they were stopping, actually, they quit playing in 75, and we just were starting at that time. We came to visit Monina in her apartment the first time, and we were afraid, because we knew the Brothers that was the soulmate, right, of the duo playing. And it was so great to work with her. She made us feel okay. We played just traditional Brazilian music. We didn't have any experience with classical music at all. And she went from scratch. And so she had a method that was not analytical. She was pretty much trying to make you understand music by gestures and singing and a lot of action.
Really? Yeah.
So I sort of got that into my teaching too. Sometimes my students, they are frightened because I do a lot of stuff. And then but it seems to work really well.
How old were you when you started working with her?
Okay, we first learned to play guitar with our dad by playing Brazilian music, traditional music.
So your dad was a player?
Yeah, he was a mandolin player,
right.
Amateur mandolin player, and he was used to go every night out. I left my mom at home with us and went out to play serenades, to play with his friends. And that was okay, but it was strange not to see your father, there in the house. And when he came back, he would bring musicians. So the house was filled with musicians all the time. It seemed that everyone played guitar. So maybe we had that image that, everybody on earth plays the instruments, right? So naturally, just wanted to play the guitar as well. But when I was 8, I asked him to teach me a few chords, and he said, no, this is not for kids. I had to wait another 4 years.
Really?
Before that actually started. And it didn't start because he taught me the chords. I had an uncle that came to visit us, and he played sort of D major, those chords, right? The regular ones. And I managed to learn from him. Then my dad also saw me playing the chords and said, wow, actually you can. And then played me a song I could accompany easily. I knew the chord chains. One problem for who is learning is to know where the chains are. But I had already in my ears, right? Because I heard so much music.
Right, right.
I knew where the chains were. He was very impressed. And then next morning, he wanted to show my mom that we were doing this together. And he plays this song, and I accompany him. And what I hear was near the bed like this. And he saw that and said, I want that too. So, and my dad just said, give him the guitar, see what he can do. It was much easier for him, actually. He just puts the chord, and he didn't prepare the chords. He just saw it, put the chords, and just accompanied the song. The next day, a second guitar appeared in the house. So we had already just once, a second one appeared in the house. That's what the beginning of the story.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, with Monina, were there particular etudes that you, or studies or exercises that you, because you guys have, uncanny ensemble. I mean, it's just, and were there etudes that developed that you remember?
No, not really. We did studies before. I mean, with her, it was all about actually playing.
Right.
Yeah.
And she chose the repertoire?
She would choose the repertoire. But what was a key thing, I think, is that she didn't have how can I say, a recipe for anything. Like, she was explaining about different styles, but she would change her mind every week. So she would notate down on the score, play this strong, play this forte, this is, the crescendo here, and we would practice that way. We'd come for the other lesson, she said, no, let's change this. It was a constant change, and it was very free. We felt very free in the process of learning, and we kept it that way somehow. Like, with Odair and I, we understood from the beginning, if we try to make a map of interpretation, it would never work.
Really?
Because we have different ways of approaching the instrument, and we think differently. Nowadays, no, it's about the same. After 50 years of playing together, it become sort of thing. But it was like very different, so we decided that if we had to bring something on, we would just play it and not try to talk about it, because the conversation actually spoiled the whole process. So at the beginning it was very difficult, but with time, he understands what I want, I understand what he wants, so we don't actually talk about it.
Great.
So there were no fights anymore. For some years there were a lot of fights.
Really?
Yeah, because you want to impose what you think. That's the way it should be played. No, do it my way. I think we found a common ground, so there is one way in between the two of us.
So essentially your guitar studies were parallel, right? Because
Exactly.
you got the guitar at the same time.
Same time.
That's very interesting. Yeah. I'm going to push ahead to your amount of composers that have written for you is astounding, but there's no question that the Piazzolla Tango Suite just took over the world. And of course your playing is staggering of it. But very few people now know what was it like to work with the great Piazzolla, this now world famous music? Can you say anything about your working with Piazzolla, or things that, in working that suite, which is now like a staple for every guitar duo?
We never actually worked with him, and we met Piazzolla 3 times. The first time we met him in Paris in '83. And the reason that we got together is that we played his music since the 70s.
Right, right.
I made a lot of arrangements with his music in a time that his music was not played in guitar at all, because I was looking actually for this sort of music that had strength, rhythms, had melodies, and I found in his music a lot of it. So I started to arrange like the jazz musicians used to do in the past. Just put the record on and just copy everything you hear, and then you make it that suitable for the guitar, right?
Right.
This is what we did with some of his works, and in '83 we met in Paris in a party. Then we could play his music for him. And he was so happy, to hear his music on the guitar. So he said, I'm gonna write a guitar duet. And that took about less than 3 months. And we were in Brazil, completely unknown. And he was already quite famous in Brazil and in Europe, not here in the West though. But he sent us this manuscript, and it was the Tango Suite. And that piece actually, we recorded a few months later, because we got the piece in January of '84, and we recorded here in the US for Nonsuch.
Right, Nonsuch, yeah.
In April or May of '84. Wow. We came here for one recital. We played in the American Hall.
Right.
And Bob Howard's, the producer
right.
of Nonsuch, was just hired by Nonsuch and went to that concert. To tell the truth, that is very hard to happen. That you play a concert and a producer comes after and says, I want to record you. And probably the impact of that piece made that possible. It was really strong. I mean, nowadays, okay, you have 30 years maybe.
Right.
Yeah, but the impact was quite strong.
Yeah, it was astounding, the virtuosity.
Yeah.
Were you in getting the music, the manuscript, were you just thrilled? Did you know?
I couldn't believe, it's wow, this is real.
This is real.
Yeah, and we learned quite quickly, and because we know we were meeting him in Liège, in Europe.
Okay.
And we were playing this festival, we wanted to play for him. And it was one of the best moments of our lives. You know, because
Did it require any arranging? How well written was it for the instrument?
very well, because he used the guitar in his quintet.
Right.
So he knew quite well how to write for the instrument. The end of the Tango Suite has a unison scale or something. I hate unisons.
Why?
Because, you know, two guitars, okay, start putting more guitars playing the same line together. It sounds like a monster. I don't like that much. I mean, even, you know, you write music for guitar ensembles. We don't double lines. We try to make the lines different, so you don't have this monster.
Right.
So what I did a change for the ending. So I put some ascendant chords together with the flow of the notes going down.
Cool.
And that became sort of a standard. We recorded, but there's no score for that. But most people try to play the way we did. We recorded. So, but they come with the wrong chords, with the wrong ideas, you know. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'm sticking with Piazzolla for a second. I mean, you've probably coached it 1 million times at this point. What are some common misconceptions in your that you find about that music, or misinterpretations, or common misinterpretations?
I think nowadays people are very used to that. And there are other very good versions out there.
Yeah.
I don't mean that our version is the one. I mean, people are entitled to put their own views into it. But I think that was with the first one, was quite strong. It was actually faster than he required to be. But that became the standard, so everybody wants to play very fast.
Right.
Which is sort of not okay for a Piazzolla, because Piazzolla music is played a little slower. But what happened is that when we played in Liège for the first time, he was there on stage, he was there in the audience.
Right.
He was so excited, he jumped on the stage and he was hugging us and saying, "You played really fast, but it's good, I like it." So he validated the way we did, so that's the way it became.
Great, great. Moving on to your own compositions, which you have written so much music over the years for such a variety of people. But I've just got to go right to, Odair, for example. In general, when you write music, are you thinking of the player's sound or their musical personality? Does that filter in, say, Yo-Yo Ma or Nadia, or
I try.
You try the LAGQ, I know.
Yeah, I know people. I want to know them, and I want to see. If I don't know personally, I want to see a video or anything that is going to help me to write, actually.
Right.
And I do a lot of arranging too for all these people. And but I got to tell just a little story about the arranging.
Yeah.
When we just started, I was telling about this thing that we started the same day, practically. But I started one day later. It turned out that we were kids, but I was older. I'm 4 years older. And everything I could play, he could play better. Do you know, if you have brothers, it's annoying when your brother, especially the little one. So, but there are beautiful stories about it, because he knew that he had more gifts, with his fingers, but he tried to play it down, sometimes, so he would embarrass me or something like that. It was beautiful. Then what happened, that we used to play the Sagreda's book.
Oh, yeah, Sagreda, sure.
Sagreda's book. And play, he was always advanced. So we started playing some songs, and he would play a little better than I. So I'd say, why can't I just put a second guitar to it? So nobody taught me how to arrange or anything, but I thought it was actually a cool idea just to make out something.
Right.
So from the beginning, even from playing Adelita by Targa, I was already adding second guitar to a first one. So I became an arranger when I was 13 years old. I was arranging stuff.
Wow. That takes us right in. I mean, because I'll get back to composing, but just given, again, not only have you composed an extraordinary amount of music and concerti, et cetera, which bravo, by the way. But the arrangements are just, legendary. I mean, so if there were some Sergio truths about arrangement truths by Sérgio Assad, what are some of the ones that you just, you say maybe even that you learned back doing those accompanying action, the accompanying parts. But in terms of melody, texture, accompaniment figures.
Yeah. Well, I think we all draw from the background we had, I grew up listening to choro. The choro is a Brazilian language that's quite strong. I mean, for learning music, because there is everything in there. There is especially counterpoint. For instance, if you play, the choro is structured like this. You have one soloist, that might be the flute or might be the mandolin. Then you have a couple of guitars at least, sometimes 3 guitars. And they have different roles. And you have a cavaquinho, which is a sort of ukulele for the rhythm. You have a pandeiro for the real rhythm.
Right.
And the guitars, they play different roles. Like one is more rhythmic with the chords, and one is completely free to play the bass lines. And the bass lines are totally improvised.
Really?
So you don't actually, so you go through the inversion of chords. You have to be very clever quickly. Because, people, they gather, they like to play like this, and sometimes they play songs or shows that you don't know. You have to follow them straight away. So you have to be very fast in changing chords. Yeah. So that was my background as a musician. So everything that I do in arranging, there's a lot of counterpoint.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's what I do.
And your pieces as well.
It's a lot of it.
Yeah.
And but because I grew up, playing the 2 guitars thing. When I tried for a solo guitar, I hear the 2 things, so I try to put them together. So it's very hard to play my music.
It is. Hence, Odair. Are there common, are you always on the lookout for arrangements? I mean, meaning, is your ear always saying, oh, that would work, or that,
Yeah. So tonight?
Yeah, let's talk about tonight.
I mean, this is a special concert because we have so much happening here tonight.
Right.
But we try to give a picture of what we did through these years. So in the first half, we have some Spanish composers, and we have some emblematic composers in our careers, like Piazzolla.
Right.
And we have Gilberto Gismonti, who is a composer that we played.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about him as well, yeah.
And then we have our dear friend Nadja Salerno-Sonnenberg joining us for a couple of pieces. We played with Nadja for a long stretch of time.
Yeah.
And the second half is dedicated to the Brazilian guitar. The Brazilian guitar has its own life. It's like you say, oh, there's the manouche guitar, there's the flamenco guitar, there's the Brazilian guitar, which is quite very strong. And we chose the composers that helped shape this way of playing the instrument since the beginning, since the first names as Canhoto and João Pernambuco. It might be interesting just to read the program notes. Then,
right.
So what is going to happen tonight is that, of course, we're not playing the originals. It wouldn't make any sense just to play the originals. Everything is arranged, and everything is arranged with different images. Like, I can turn on the João Pernambuco piece in the sort of avant-garde, a little bit avant-garde piece of music. At least the introduction is very out there. So there's a lot of, for instance, the waltz of Disco de Rosa. There's a very emblematic waltz in Brazil, the most played waltz ever by Canhoto, becomes a little jazzy waltz at the end. So every one of them have something special that I think it's special that has somehow our print.
Right. I mean, you're starting with Cordoba, because you're opening with Cordoba.
But Cordoba is not my arrangement.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
It's not my arrangement.
Then who's
We have to pay tribute to the good arrangers.
Okay.
That's a Pujol.
A Pujol.
Yeah. It's so good, his arrangement, that there's no need for another one. Just do that one.
Great.
The Granados, yes, we did it ourselves. Yeah.
Fantastic. How are we? Are we cool? Oh, good. Because it's always a panic when we go over. Now, I wanted to jump back to when I first heard you guys in this room. Well, actually, in Tom Humphrey's apartment, right. Actually. Who was a legendary guitar maker. Oh, and, we were so taken. I'd never seen any 2 people play from memory before. Now, is that something that you always did? Or when you were growing up, did you always play? Is that something that, your teacher said you must play from memory? Because
yeah, that's exactly what happened.
So it was just a given.
It was like this. No music in front of you, you have to memorize. And you know, if you're guitars, if you know the guitar, the dots on the neck, take them off.
Really? I have a dot
Yeah.
on every fret. I mean,
Yeah. No, we're not allowed to have the dots.
and I still don't know where I am. Yeah.
Yeah. So that the two mandatory things, you know.
When you did concerti, for example, you know, you did Rodrigo concerti, do you find it just easy to memorize? Do you have techniques that you would, you know, that helped you in terms of memorize? Because sometimes I find the most simple parts sometimes are the hardest to
Yeah.
actually remember. Whereas if you have a solo line, that's
right.
much
That's
easier.
okay.
Yeah.
I always played sort of second guitar, so I have all those lines. So
Right.
I suppose that my memory is very good.
Right. It is. It is.
So, but I don't think there is a recipe for memory, except that you have to try and keep trying to memorize things, and eventually you might become better.
Do you naturally feel more comfortable?
No, for instance, tonight we're playing the duo thing we played by memory, but as we involve in other people, that's different.
Right.
So we're going to have scores here when we play the trios. Maybe not for everything, but
Yeah. Just that was so stunning, and it even inspired Rie and I.
it's funny to put Paquito here on the stage to play written notes. I gave him actually a score. It's going to be really funny when you guys see, because it's really wide.
Right.
And he's going to play it, but he doesn't play actually what's written. It's just like a sort of map, and he does whatever. You know.
Great. As well he should. Indeed. Now I want to go back to a conversation we had in Spain many years ago, and we were talking about composition and just you know, the difficulties of writing or the blocks and you said something profound to me that always stuck with me. You said, you know, sometimes I'm so slightly trapped by my own Brazilian-ness. Can you speak a little bit, but do you feel freer now? You want to share this with me now, you know, for us? Are you still trapped?
A question that was confidential.
Yeah. But I thought we should go deep.
Yeah. How long ago was that? You remember?
Man, that was like 20 plus. Yeah, 20 years ago.
That means that people change.
Right.
Yeah. I think for many years, actually, the thing goes like this. I grew up through the show on Brazilian music. I was a fan of Jobim and that kind of bossa nova style. And then I started to go to university to study music for real. In a time that was impossible because that was the 70s, and the idea is that everybody has to write dodecaphonic music, and that was very heavy, and no acceptance of any tonal thing at all. So if you played any tonal music, you were off. So I felt so embarrassed because everything I did was tonal. Though getting to the school, I would hide my stuff, would never show it to my friends.
Really?
I just completely stopped trying to write music for many years.
Really?
And when we went to Europe back beginning of the 80s, there for the first time I felt free, no pressure. And we are talking about Europe.
Right.
So the things that in Brazil, things that happened 10 years later, so that dogmatism that happened in Europe before, it was very present when I'm in school, I was in school. So in Europe felt freer, so I could, you know, start writing some tonal stuff again.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you feel, you know, and now you mentioned do you feel that your influences were, I mean, because even your Lebanese background, right, from your dad.
Yeah, but that's not very strong, you know, that's another story. But, you know,
Right.
my background was completely Brazilian. So when I was free to write music again, I just went back to my roots. That's what I did.
Right.
And for 10 years, let's say, I couldn't move from that. I was sort of slave of my roots. Maybe it was when we met to say, well,
Yeah.
I can't get out of this, right?
Right.
But I tried. For some years. I did a lot of different stuff.
Right.
Even playing different instruments, even, you know, trying to combine Middle Eastern music. We did an album with Nadja of gypsy music. I tried many different stuff, but now I'm back to Brazil.
and we are glad. We're always glad. Well, just in summing up, I mean, what would you, in looking back, I mean, 50 years is such an extraordinary career, and that very few people have, and you've played with so many different people. How would you say, if you could articulate how the duo or your views of music have changed? In this time, especially this tour, and like you say, this program is very sculpted.
No. I don't think it's like, you have a goal, and actually didn't have any goal when we started studying with our teacher. She planted a seed, like said, look, if you do this seriously, you might have a career. You might have an opportunity out of the country, go somewhere else, meet a lot of people. That sounded so great. I said, wow. But from the point that she planted that seed, that I was 15 years old, to actually that to happen, it took at least 15 years. Because we left Brazil, I was already nearly 30. When we met, I was probably around that.
Really? Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't know what's going to happen in your life. That's the thing. I mean, you can make plans, like we had plans, but they turn out to be completely different from what we planned.
Right.
So, and actually, never thought through the 80s that we would be playing with other musicians. And through the 90s, we started all this set of collaborations, and we played with many, many other people.
I know, it's
so
extraordinary.
I love to do that, Instead of going apart, like become a soloist, you just put more people.
Well, Sergio, I got to tell you, what an honor. We're so thrilled to be here and to hear this concert tonight. And thank you so much for taking the time
No, it's a pleasure.
to really, really appreciate it. Really.